Hello and welcome to the JB4000 part 5 of our little robot series here. This is David Ward, and when last I left you, we just added the rods for the upper arm, and then the adjusted the little rubbery boot thing around the connector there. And in this part 5, we're going to go on and finish out the forearm, hopefully, and maybe do the hand as well if we have enough time. So, all that being said, let's go ahead and tab into edit mode and get started on here. So, first thing I'd like to do is go ahead and bring the edge of the upper arm rod out a little further. And then I'm going to Shift A, or actually Shift S, and put the cursor to selected. Let me go ahead and turn on my screencast keys. There we go. And now I'm going to add yet another cylinder. And this time, we still have I didn't actually close Blender since part 4, so I still have all the settings that I changed. So that'll work for now. I just got to rotate it 90 degrees. Let's do that manually on the numpads. R90, give it a rotating of 90 degrees, and just scale it up. And now we're going to grab this end and drag it out. And it's going to be very kind of, well, take a look at our concept. More, like I said in part 1 or 2, I'm going more for these proportions here. I want the forearms and the hands to be quite a bit bigger than the upper arms, and then the shin and feet to be quite a bit bigger than the thighs. So this doesn't really give an accurate representation of the proportions, but anyways, so we can do one of two things here. Since the forearm only bends in one direction, we can add a joint here and just have it swivel along that joint, which I think I'll probably do. I was going to go ahead and maybe say we could add a rubber boot on this end as well, but that's more for rotating in, more than one axis. So this is only going to rotate, I guess, in the Z-axis if we were to rotate it here, but the local axis will probably be the X-axis once we start getting the rig and everything set up. So let's start styling this forearm to fit there on the top of the upper arm, or the tip of the upper arm. So we're going to add a loop in here about to there, and then we'll add a loop down here, but we're not going to mess with this end right now. But I would like to go ahead and select everything there on the forearm. Control L, there we go, and scale that up quite a bit, maybe a little bit less on the X-axis, to about maybe, let's see what it looks like over here. Yeah, that'll work, and then we'll go ahead and taper it a little bit as well. So let's select this edge here, scale that down just a bit, and maybe drag it back. There we go. Okay, now what I want to do is make an entryway, as it were, for the upper arm bone to be in when this rotates. So, well, right now we couldn't rotate because it's basically on there. It doesn't have any place to go. So what I need to do is go ahead and add a loop there and a loop there, and then on this guy on the very end right there, let's go ahead and hit I believe it's Control T. Well, that works, but not really the way I was wanting. So, tell you what, let's just delete that and do like we done on top of the head. And tell you what, for now, let's go ahead and delete those new loops that we did. Just select those and X edge loop. There we go. Oops, wrong one. I did the wrong ones. Okay, these two. There we go. Edge loop and that one, edge loop. Okay, there we go. All right, now go ahead and do like we did on the top of the head, except we'll have, let's see. Trying to think here. Tell you what, let's select that, and then Control L, and then we'll select the inverse and hide that just so it's out of the way. Now, I want to create a flat surface here, and we have 8 vertices selected. So, okay, here's what we can do. We'll select both of those, hit F to create an edge between them, and then we'll go W, subdivide, and it'll subdivide that into 2, and then we can just add 4 edges like so. Or not 4 edges, but yeah, 4 edges to make 4-sided polygon. There we go. All right, so now, well, let's do the same thing on this end. Go and get rid of that. Faces, and then vertex F, W, subdivide. There we go. And cap that off. Now you can create faces by selecting all 4 vertices that are involved, or you can do it a little faster by just selecting edge mode and just selecting opposite faces, and it'll put them together like so. So might save you a little bit of hassle. Okay, so now go ahead and unhide the rest of the stuff, and we're going to go ahead and add the loops again right there, and one down here, and then I'm going to select the new faces there. I should have left those hidden. There we go. And scale that up a little bit on the Z-axis, and then I'm going to grab the vertex at the top and bottom, scale that down so it's a little flatter, and then these guys as well. Okay, now this guy, I'm going to go ahead and just delete him. There we go. And you can kind of see what I'm going for now. Just to place a space to pivot in, and it's only going to pivot on this axis. Excuse me. So that's the only place we really need to add rotational room, as it were. Okay, so now I need to add part of the mesh inside there. So tell you what, select this, Control L, and then select inverse and hide everything, just so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. I'm going to select that whole loop, and I'm going to extrude it in. Just hit E to extrude it. Almost sounds German, extrudigen. I guess. I don't speak German fluently, so couldn't say for sure. Entschuldigen Sie. Is that how are you or something like that? I don't remember. Okay, so we're just going to shape this up about like so. Then we'll come in here and go ahead and kind of do like we did on the ends. We're going to have to create a face there and then subdivide it. Then we'll grab that new vertex and put that up there onto the corner section. And then we'll go ahead and grab the edge select and create new faces there. There we go. Now, I would like for this to come down a little bit further inside. So I'm going to extrude it down some. There we go. And now we basically have what we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and set that to smooth shaded. But it looks a little dirty, a little messy around the edges there. So we need to go in there and add a few more extra loops just so we can clean it up some. Maybe one right in here. There we go. And let's add a loop inside there. About like so. Okay, so that looks quite a bit better. So now, if this was to rotate, it could rotate fully until this point here rotated up to there. So I guess kind of what we need to do is either move it, let's unhide everything. We can move the, yeah, let's do that. Let's move the pivot thing there. Actually, let's get the vertex select there and there. Control L. And we'll just move that up the rod a little bit more. So now it actually has, it'll probably be rotating about, not quite where the 3D cursor is, probably more like right there. And it'll rotate, and this will come, and it'll just miss our pivot, or the piston holder there. Okay, so speaking of the piston holder, let's go ahead and create that little piston guy. I want to do that here on the back side of the arm, and I'm going to kind of flatten it out right here. Let's go ahead and scale that on the y-axis until let's do SY0, so it's nice and flat. Let's get around behind here if we can. There we go. And actually, let me undo that. I'm going to select this whole, kind of the counterpart of the front part where we added the rotational area, and then this is going to be a flat area where the actual pivot's going to be attaching to our connector there. So I'm going to scale that on the y-axis, 0%. There we go. And then as it comes down further down the arm, it'll start tapering down. Like so. Okay, so we can kind of get an idea what this is starting to look like. Nice robot, cartoonish robot. Okay, So we got the place to put our piston there. Let's go ahead and add a loop here, because what I want to do now is actually make a surface for the piston to lie on, to be attached to. If I can select the right face, there we go. Put our top view, and let's go ahead and flatten that on the y-axis. There we go. Actually, missed these guys. There we go. What's going on here? There we go. SY0. There we go. Sometimes I hit the wrong button and I'm like, what did I do? We'll scale that on the z-axis a little bit just to make it a little bigger. Okay, now let's extrude it out once. The y-axis there, and then add a loop there just so it's nice and sharp. And tell you what, let's add a loop around the bottom of it too so it's nice and flat there. And okay, that'll work. Okay, so now for the piston itself. It's gonna have, let's go ahead and stretch this guy out a little bit further out. Okay, and now we need to have kind of a rotational connector on this one too, because the piston's actually going to be the fat part. Let's see, there's the cylinder and the rod of the piston. The rod is the part that comes out, that pushes out or pulls in of the piston, and then the cylinder is the actual container. So the cylinder is going to be attached to a hinge here as well, so it moves freely. You'll see once we start rigging it. But let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to kind of take a shortcut here and select the part of the hinge up here that we already created. Shift D, duplicate that down, and we're going to put it about right there. And let's go ahead and create a base for it to be attached to the arm. So let's just select that whole edge there. And let's just go ahead and scale it up some. There we go. Hit the period button while you're rotating around. It'll focus the view on what's selected. Like if I'm like say I have this bolt here selected, Control L, and like we're way over here. I'm trying to focus on it, but I can't do it because it's out of the view. If I just hit the period button on your numpad, it'll zoom in and focus directly on that. Okay, so let's do that over here. Let's select that whole edge again. We're going to extrude in this time, the y-axis there. There, okay. And now I'm going to select this whole edge here, and we're going to extrude that on the x-axis down. So we have a nice plate that we can attach to the forearm with, yes, a bolt head. So we'll just select that, Shift D, move that on the x-axis there. We're going to rotate it also on the x-axis 90 degrees. Focus on that. Let's go to our top view, 7 on your numpad, and just connect that guy right there. And we'll go to Control 1, will show us the back view. And let's actually tell you what, let's make these a little smaller. And there can be 2 of them holding that on. So we'll move that to there, and then Shift D, duplicate one on the Z-axis down to about right there. Okay, so that looks nice, huh? Okay, so go ahead and save this, part 5, there we are. And let's go ahead and start working on the actual piston itself. So it's gonna be very simple, not a lot to it. I'm gonna Shift A, and we're going to add a cylinder. And let's see what it looks like. Looks like the bolt head, sort of, that we created in part 4. So let's set the depth a little higher. Let's make it 0.5. And that'll probably be pretty good. We'll add a couple of loops in here just so it's not diamond shaped rather than cylinder shaped. And Control L to select everything, go to our top view, rotate that 90 degrees on the y-axis, and we'll go ahead and drag it down here. For now, what we're going to need to do once we get everything situated, we're going to stretch basically from this hinge all the way to this hinge. So it's going to be kind of a diagonal line. So right now we'll just for ease of usability sake, we'll just create it in a horizontal line and then rotate it once we're done. Okay, so one thing we need to do, sorry, I just had to pause and go get a sip of water. Had a dry throat going on. Hitting the wrong, got my gaming keypad over there. Anyways, okay, back to focus. One thing we want to do now is let's select this edge here, and we're going to extrude it out just a bit and scale it down. And this is basically going to be the excuse me, the nozzle or neck or whatever, where the rod actually comes out of the piston. So we'll extrude that out just a little bit more, and then one more, scale it down, and extrude back in on the x-axis, scale that down also. Actually, let's create one more loop right there and bring that out, just kind of a lip around it. So about like so. And let's go ahead and set the shading to smooth. And okay, so that's that. Now that's basically the cylinder. Now let's go ahead and create the rod. Same deal, cylinder. And this time it's probably tall enough, maybe about 0.6. Let's make it 0.65. 0.65. There we go. And then the radius, we'll make that maybe 0.05, and then we'll scale it as needed if we need to. Put a loop up here and a loop down here, again just so it's not tapered too crazily. Go ahead and edge slide that up a little bit more. Oops, I grabbed the wrong one. Edge slide. There we go. Really close to the top. Okay. Now, go ahead and select one of the vertices or the edges and Control L. Rotate that, same thing as we did on the cylinder. Rotate that 90 degrees on the y-axis. I hit X on accident. So we'll scale that down until it's small enough to go inside that little nozzle that we created. Maybe line it up just right. There we go. Scale it down a little further. And now it should, let's see what it looks like through the side view tab. Okay, so it needs to come down a little further. Okay, so about right there. Okay, so that's looking like a cylinder, sort of. So a couple things we need to do is add some hinges to it so it can attach to the hinges on the actual robot arm. And it looks like it's going to be a little big, so tell you what, let's select it all. Control L, scale it down just a bit. Okay, go ahead and move it almost into place, and then let's start working on getting the hinges on there. So I'll tell you what, let's grab the rod and make it a little bit longer on the x-axis, SX, and scale it up a bit, and we'll go ahead and put it inside the cylinder a little bit, because when the arm is straight like this, the rod is going to be pretty well inside the cylinder, and then once the arm starts bending, the distance between each of these hinges is going to widen, and that's going to have the rod is going to be coming out of the cylinder. So this all, like I said, this will all make sense once we start rigging. We're just getting the looks of it in right now, but we'll get it set up, you know, once we get out the whole modeled out, then we'll start rigging and it'll look better. Okay, so now we're going to create something very similar to the hinges already, but instead of having two different places there, it's just going to be one. So what we can do is just select. We'll kind of do like we did on the back hinge, on the forearm there. Just select that, but this time I'm going to deselect these guys and these guys. And I'll tell you what, let's just go ahead and get that out and just duplicate it. SD, duplicate. And then I want to go ahead and get rid of the pieces of the bolt head and bolt in there. So just go ahead and delete those vertices. There we go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create a face here where we have that empty spot. There we go. Okay, so now we have this. Undo that. We have this place, this piece that's going to go in between these two pieces of the hinge there. So let's make it a little taller so it'll fit the area a little better. Let's go ahead and put one more loop right there on the bottom, so it's a nice straight edge on both the top and bottom. Let's go to our side view so we can see it a little better. And tell you what, Control L, let's bring that over here so it's not in the way of anything. And then we'll scale this, or just drag that down. And tell you what, I tell you a lot of things, don't I? Tell you what. Let's make that to where it's pretty well even in there. And that's pretty good. Let's scale it just a little bit on the Z-axis there, just to make it a little slimmer. It has a little bit of wiggle room. And we'll go ahead and rotate that 90 degrees. Okay, negative 90 degrees. There we go. Sorry, my mouse pad was acting crazy. Oops. Rotate negative 90 degrees. There we go. All right, so now we'll set this at the end of the rod there and start kind of making a cap. So let's select all these guys except for that on the rod, and we'll scale that up about like so. And then let's go ahead and add a loop around the middle just so we can add some roundness to the end of this. So right now it's very square, obviously. So we'll scale that up on the Z-axis. And then we'll put one more loop around the edges of that and do the same thing, except in the Y-axis instead of the Z. SY. Just make that rounded. And we'll need to get these guys as well. Actually, tell you what, let's select the bottom ones as also so that the scale the exact same. Just round that out, and then we'll go ahead and select the sides. Scale those up too. Okay, so now let's select this whole, well, if I can grab it there, this whole loop there, and we'll scale it down. Let's go to our other view. Okay, so we're going to need to move the cylinder and rod up a little bit. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and do that. Control 1, so we're in the back view. There we go. Select one vertex of the cylinder, one vertex of the rod. Select that, and we'll move that up on the Z-axis until it's evened up right about there. Okay, so we're almost done. We'll scale that up just a bit so it can slide over the tip of the rod and extrude that back on the X-axis just about to right there. Then we'll extrude one more time and scale this one down so it's attached on the end of the rod, and we'll add one more loop there just so it's squared off. Okay, so now we have an end to our rod inside our piston there. So we'll go ahead and, well, let's go ahead and put the one on this end as well. It's going to be kind of the same thing. Go ahead and select that whole end. You notice I'm not putting holes in there, and that's not really necessary because we're not going to see them anyways, unless the robot falls apart or something. But you know, if you want to do that on your own, feel free. I'm not going to go over that in this particular session here. So let's rotate that 180 degrees so it's facing the opposite way, and we're just going to kind of merge it in with the end of this the cylinder. So make sure we have the same amount of edges there. We have 12, and on this end we only have 8. So let's get rid of 4 of them. Select these 2 loops here. I'll do that. And we'll go ahead and hit X and go ahead and get rid of those loops. Actually got to do it. Oh, okay. Used to have to do it one at a time, but I guess newer versions of Blender let you do multiples. So now we should have only 8. So now we can blend it in with the ends of this quite seamlessly. So let's go ahead and delete this loop and this loop here. Let's see, delete that edge loop. Yes. Okay. Since it's on the very edge of the model and there's nothing, it's not in between 2 edges, it's not technically a loop. So I have to just delete the vertices. Okay. So now let's select this end cap here on our cylinder and just go ahead and delete that, the face. There we go. Now we'll edge select and just start kind of sewing this together. There we go. Oopsie, wrong selection there. Okay. Something looks off. Probably some normals are messed up. So let's finish up here and then we'll fix that. And last but not least, there we go. Okay, so now, like I said, oh, I see what happened. Selected the wrong edge. So we'll delete that edge and just do it again. There we go. Okay, so now we have that, but it's not quite as flat as I'd like, so let's go ahead and add that loop back in there. Like so, and then this one on the bottom as well. Like so. Okay. Or you know what we can do so that it doesn't add a squared off part on our cylinder, which is not totally too bad, but I don't want it there. Let's undo those two loops we just created and select the top and, if I can get a good view, the top and bottom of this joint here that's going to be swiveling. And this one. And we're going to just go ahead and extrude that, and we'll scale it up just a bit. About like so. Okay. So now, let's move that in a little bit. Where it's not... I guess we can get rid of a couple of these loops up here as well. Edge loop. And we'll go ahead and leave that one there. But let's select everything else. Getting real close so we don't actually select the wrong part. Oops. Just like that. Undo. There we go. Alright. And we'll go ahead and scoot that in to where it's a lot closer to the canister. Or the cylinder. Maybe that's what's called canister. I don't know. I'm not a mechanic, so... Let's add another loop in there just to get a nice and sharp edge. Okay. So now let's select this whole end. Again. It's going to be hard to get that one. It's right there by the other one. Zoom in here. There we go. Okay. So move this in on the x-axis to where it's pretty well evened up. And let's select this guy and round that out so this has more pivot room. There we go. Okay, so now we got the cylinder pretty well, the piston pretty well created. We can set it up to attach to our hinge points. So let's get that situated. Let's select this guy and Control L. Go ahead and drag him until he's pretty well centered up on that. Maybe about right there. And then this guy, Control L. Looks like he's probably pretty set there. But like I said, we're going to have to turn this diagonally anyway, so really getting it set up perfectly right now is kind of a waste of time. So let's rotate that a little bit more. Okay. And you'll notice the cylinder of the piston is starting to intersect with the top of the forearm. So one thing we can do to counteract that, let's just move this back out of the way. Go ahead and bring this hinge up as well, like the one on the upper arm is spaced out quite a bit further from where it's attached. We'll do the same thing on this guy. Just drag it out, maybe about right there, and add a couple of loops in here just so it maintains the sharp metallic surface. Control E, edge slide, drag that back. Same thing on this guy. Edge slide. There we go. Okay, so now when we get that set up, drag it in. Almost there. Okay. Spacing is a little off, so let's get this centered up there. And then we'll select this guy, Control L, and move that to about right there. Okay, so there we go. Got a nice controller for his elbow. So when his forearm bends, this will follow along like so. I'll zoom in here so you can see it a little better. Actually, go to our top view. When it bends right here, it's going to pull this down as it bends, and then that will stretch out this piston rod. So one good idea might be to go ahead and select the ends of the canister here, the cylinder. I'm going to call it canister from now on. That sounds better because they're both cylinders, as it were. So Okay, so we'll grab that, and since we're in edit mode, it's, well, let's see. No, I guess that's still global. Let's turn this to normal, so it drags along the normals of the selection, kind of like the Alt S scales along normals. So we'll just drag that up, and it drags it perfectly in line with where the rod is at. So we'll move that up about to say right there, and then let's make the rod itself quite a bit longer as well, just so we have plenty of room when he rotates fully out. And one other thing, when it starts bending and it starts being a more direct line, we're going to have some issues of intersecting right in here as well. So tell you what, let's grab that, and tell you what, let's add a couple of loops there, and we'll drag this down, angle that maybe about like so. And then let's grab these, Control E, see if we can edge slide those one at a time maybe. There we go, to where they're right under where that hinge is bolted on. There we go. So now that should be plenty of room, I would think. But again, I'm not a mechanic or an engineer or anything like that, so hopefully this will work. Being a cartoon style, I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, so wow, 30 minutes. Apologize, this part 5 kind of really drew on there, didn't it? But I think we got quite a ways in. We can jump in and recycle some of this when we get to the legs. So I'll go ahead and save this part 5, and without wasting any more time, I'll just go ahead and say that's all for part 5. So part 6, we'll try to get in and do the hands. So that'll be that. So thanks for watching. Sorry this one took a little longer than the others, but I'll catch you in part 6.